I was reading some of the Glenn speech from the Restoring Courage event that you watched here yesterday, and I can see how, the hate-mongering, he tries to deny it, but, look at this. I'm looking at the copy right here. It's amazing. Listen to this. Last year, hundreds of thousands of Americans gathered at the Lincoln Memorial for an event called Restoring Honor. Some of you were there. It may have changed you. I know it changed me. In August, I challenged Americans to live a life of honesty and integrity. This year, I have a new challenge. Today, I ask you to turn your eyes to Israel and restore courage. Now listen, this is where the hate-mongering really kicks in. I have been asked, what can you teach Israel about courage? My answer is simple. Nothing. Then they ask, well, why are you coming to Israel? Because I say, in Israel, you see courage. And that is the sort of hate speech that Glenn Beck provides on a daily basis. This man obviously hates Israel because he has to, he's clearly he likes Israel a lot for an anti-Semite, I will say that. But as we learned in the media over the past couple of weeks, just spending millions of your own dollars to hold an event in which you say you support Israel in front of the entire nation is not enough evidence to show that you're not an anti-Semite. That's, crazy. Oh, what a silly goose. I tell you, I was reading one of the articles about the actual event in which it's so amazing because you have all of this evidence of Glenn, who has been a friend to Israel, and even a lot of the groups that have attacked Glenn on some of the comments that he said have said he's a friend to Israel. This is not even, it's you're in exclusive Media Matters territory here. And of course, does the average Israeli know who Media Matters is? No. And they don't care. They don't care about some idiotic attack group in America. They don't know who they are. So when they get fed this crap, probably some of them believe it. But I was one of the things they showed in the coverage of Restoring Courage was a guy who took a picture of himself at the event, and there was all these empty seats around him. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting picture because look, people obviously didn't care about this event in Israel, because there was all these open seats at the event. And then I looked a little bit closer, and I noticed he was sitting under a tent. Sarah, do you remember when you were watching the footage of Restoring Courage? Do you remember seeing a tent anywhere?
Definitely not.
No, I didn't see a tent anywhere either, which is weird because it's possible maybe the guy was at a viewing party of a remote viewing event.
They didn't have any of those.
No, there was only 1,400 of them around the globe.
It wasn't in the media.
No, that wasn't even mentioned in most of the reports. You're right about that. And as Pat said, all it was he held it at a event that at a place where an archaeological park the Israelis took control of in 1967. That's the significance of this of the location. But interesting to see because I didn't see a tent on premises. Now, there was that little overhang thing there that could not be moved because it's a historic site and everything. They had that overhang thing. But that wasn't where this guy was sitting. And it's interesting because he wasn't even at the event. You see, they promoted it as if he was at the event where there were empty seats, but there weren't empty seats at the event. He was somewhere else. It's so pathetic. Look, and the other thing is they're like, well, 1,700 people showed up to go to... Look at the other event. Look at the one we did Sunday night, where you can see, and in the entire crowd, you can see the dome of people. There's thousands and thousands of people there. The reason there were 1,700 people at Restoring Courage is because it was a ticketed event. There were only 1,700 chairs.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard, but Joe said that there was only a limited amount that you could fit in such a sacred place.
Right. They didn't let us.
Right.
Glenn didn't want this. He didn't. This was not. And we've said this on the air before the event. Before the freaking event. This is not the National Mall. We were trying to turn out 300,000-400,000 people like we did a year ago. This is a country that we don't broadcast in, that has a small area where seating is available in a very important location of significance.
Yeah, but it's not like Citizens Park or
Right.
Yankee Stadium. It's
not
a
designed
sacred
for
location.
a big
right.
crowd. Yes, we weren't. This was not a event designed to pull out hundreds of thousands of people. If it were, we'd probably have it in the country where we had radio stations. I don't know if anybody would think of that. Yet the media just acts as if only 1,700 people showed up. It's a ticketed event. Only 1,700 people could fit there. And we had an event 2 nights earlier, not the main event. This was a lesser event, not as far as importance, but it was announced later. It was not the event that we promoted to. Yet there were far more people than 1,700 there. So perhaps that gives you an indication that there's a reason why there was only 1,700 chairs. There's only 1,700 chairs, and there's 1,700 people. What that is 100%. I mean, there were a couple seats I noticed that were empty, like 2. But that's because the people were in the program, and they would get up and they would come back down. I don't understand it.
What's funny, though, had there been, some sort of crisis or emergency and they had filled it to maximum occupancy and something happened, it would be all over the place that he stuffed it to the brim and all this stuff and totally just peed all over a sacred location where this can't be taken seriously.
Right.
Doesn't make any sense.
It never does. That's the lesson here. And this is why you wonder why we even have a program called The Fourth Hour, because we sit here and we think about these things as if they're ever going to be answered. Well, guess what? They're never going to be answered. No matter what, Glenn is going to be vilified by the media. We have to just sit back. We have to, I guess, acknowledge it when it occurs. But the bottom line is we should sit back and we should just laugh at it, because what does it matter? I mean, what does it matter? This event was, a huge success. We got thousands of people to travel to freaking Israel. Is Keith Olbermann doing that? I'd like to know if there's any other host in America this side of Rush Limbaugh that could get people to travel to Israel like that. Is there? Maybe. Maybe Bill O'Reilly. I don't know. I mean, there's some big hosts out there. I can't think of anyone on the left that could do it. Can you? I can't think of anybody. What? Look at the standard we're talking about here. This is a radio show. I haven't been in radio for, too long. I started working in radio in 1997. 1997, okay? In 1997...
I was 4.
Yeah. No, I know that. Were you really? I believe it. 1997, okay? Let me tell you about the old days. Back in the late 90s, we had a man called the Bill Clinton as the president. And he was the good president that all he did was screw interns. He didn't blow up our entire economy like the one we have now. And back in 1997, I guess the first time I ever met Glenn was, maybe it was the second time. It was the first time I really talked to him, was at a radio gig. It was at an appearance at I think a Toyota dealership, because my big job at the time was I would hang balloons and put up banners at various establishments in the southern Connecticut area.
So it's not much different from what you do today.
No, it was more responsibility, but it's not much different. Much more responsibility back then. But because the balloons had to be hung. I mean, here, who cares what the heck I say on the air? But then the balloons better be hung, and that you better make sure you have the masking tape with you, or those banners will not stay up. Okay? So I was at a Toyota dealership, and we started talking about talk radio. I always loved talk radio. I had listened to Rush. I had listened to sports radio for a long time. I had listened to some Imus from back in the day, and a bunch of other hosts, and I just really loved talk radio. It's something I always wanted to do once I became familiar with it. So I was talking to Glenn, and I said, he asked me what I wanted to do with my life as far as radio. And I think most people answer that with, I'd like to be cool and go to concerts and meet girls and do something fun like music radio. And instead I said I wanted to do talk radio. So he knew I was a loser right away. And I realized then that he also was a loser, trying to get out of the fun ends of radio and become a talk radio host. So we worked together there. But at that appearance with Glenn, there was approximately 0 people there. Okay? We were doing a radio appearance in which nobody basically showed up at a car dealership that had, they run tons of advertising for it. Glenn had mentioned it on the air. And maybe throughout the 2-hour period, 5 people showed up. And we had a long enough lull for me to launch my radio career at it. So, put that in perspective here. What just occurred is thousands of people went to Israel because all the way to the Middle East, into the middle of a war zone where rockets are falling all the time, spent thousands of their own dollars to experience something like that with Glenn. There's no other host in America that could do that, with the possible exception of a couple others that have never tried. I don't know who it is. I don't know who's doing that. And yet that's supposed to be this horrible failure. Glenn has no relevance. Hundreds of thousands. When we put the event on American soil, hundreds of thousands of people went to it. I mean, that's, and don't even give me, it's not because, Glenn's fading because he doesn't have Fox anymore. Look, GBTV is going to be huge. It hasn't even started yet. We've talked about that before. I mean, this is just essentially a preview of GBTV. It launches on 9/12.
As a side note, looked amazing. Like the quality of GBTV.
Yeah.
Because I had my doubts. We're in Israel. It's all the way over in who knows where, which it's near what?
Right.
Anyway,
good analysis of the geography of the region, yes.
Maps as such.
Yeah. But yeah, it did look amazing.
But I was really, literally, completely, honestly impressed with the quality and the HD.
Yeah.
Like I could totally see it happening.
I watched this on my big screen, on my Roku, and perfect quality.
I don't know what that is, but is that by
no, I don't want that.
The Iraq?
It's near the Iraq, yes. The Roku is near the Iraq, such as. So, think about that for a second. What other host is doing that? Is Ed freaking Schultz getting hundreds of thousands of people to show up somewhere? Yeah, exactly.
I don't.
Is Rachel Maddow? I missed the Rachel Maddow trip to Israel where thousands of people went. I missed that for some reason. Not to mention, we had 25,000 people come out to an event in 2003 in Huntington, West Virginia. When's the last time Keith Olbermann gathered 25,000 people to Huntington, West Virginia? By the way, before we had a television show. 2003, was it? There was the Rallies for America. And by the way, thousands of those people were in a caravan across the country where we drove all over America on a bus, and thousands of people followed behind. And then we had a great program at where Marshall University is. In a huge stadium. 25,000 people. And by the way, I think Lee Greenwood is still performing. That's I'm pretty sure he's still playing at that show, just so you know. It was a great show, and that was 2003. I mean, the bottom line is, it's not because Glenn's so talented. Believe me, he's not. The bottom line is that people connect with the message. They connect with certain values. And one of those values is the defense of Israel. You can call them terrorists all you want, but they're the only people standing up for freedom in that area. And that entire region is dominated by oppression. It's dominated by tyranny. It's dominated by people who take freedoms away. And here's this one little nation with barely anybody to stand up and defend them in the midst of that muckety-muck. And I think it is worth standing up for it. I mean, I don't think it's something Glenn's ever going to be embarrassed about, and I don't think it's something that Glenn's going to care what the media actually says. I mean, he'll care for a minute, but you have to wind up stepping back and saying, "Look, this is going to happen every time we do something. They're going to lie about the event every time. They're going to lie about you at your Tea Party rally every time. They're going to lie about what Rick Perry says every single time. This is all they do. They've built an entire industry on lying to you about things. And luckily, because of the internet and because of talk radio, there's somebody out there saying the other side of these things. But I mean, I don't know how we even existed until this stuff started. 888-727-BECK. We're running late. Back in a second.